Hello, my little Luxxes. Welcome to another episode of Luxxxy Charms. I am your host, cosplayer Charsie Luxxx. This appears like it would be another ghost story episode, but today we are going to do another movie review. So, as always, welcome to my channel. We can still say gather around the campfire, if you will, because this is a horror movie review, and obviously horror movies themselves are a ghost story because, let's face it, urban legends, stories, things that people have talked about is what developed into what movies became. Obviously, they started off as plays and developed into becoming movies. So why don't you go ahead, gather around the fireplace as we talk about this movie review. And today we will be talking about the 2006 Stay Alive. Curious how messed up my hair is going to be by the end of this episode, since this cape keeps traveling on my head. This is a horror film that's not really talked about a lot, and I mean, there's obvious reasons why, but we'll get into it as we talk about this. And March 24th, 2006 was the original release date for this film in the United States. In this film, it was directed by William Brent Bell. It is labeled as a supernatural horror film. William Brent Bell had co-written this movie with Matthew Peterman. And excuse me if I keep trying to indicate to my notes and that, especially when I give the cast and the crew, because, you know, I'm going to butcher some names. I'm not good at remembering people and their names and things like that. An interesting fact to bring up: it was the first film in 5 years released by Hollywood Pictures, and to date, it is still one of Disney's only horror movies. And I kind of had the fact in here that I'm going to look on my phone to get it correct. It is known as one of Disney's only horror films, slasher films, but it's not including all the films that Disney inherited when it started buying things. Like, for instance, 20th Century Fox. Obviously, it has horror films because of that. But this is noting for the fact that this is the only one that Disney actually produced and created. So let's get into the cast of this film. Some recognizable names, and I'm sure I knew this thing was going to keep traveling on my head. We're just gonna have a whole video of me messing with this thing, going, "Why won't you stay on my head, Cape? Please send help." So the cast of the film, we have John Foster as the character Hutch, and he would also be known in the film Pandorium? I can't pronounce that. Pandorium. Samara Armstrong as Abigail. She would be known from The O.C. or Dark Wolf, which is a really funny, ridiculous, probably one of the cheesiest werewolf movies I have ever seen. We have Frankie Muniz as Swink. For whatever reason throughout the film, I kept thinking they were calling him Swank, but I think it was Swink. And we would know him mostly from Malcolm in the Middle, so to this day, he will forever be stuck as Malcolm in my head because I grew up with that. And Jimmy Simpson as Phineas, and I know him from quite a bit of films, but one of my favorite ones more recently, would be Knights of Bad. If you have not seen that film, you need to watch that right now because that's probably one of the best movies out there, and it is a comfort film of mine. So if I'm ever in a bad mood, you better believe I have Knights of Bad on. Sophia Bush as October. She would be mostly known for One Tree Hill. Adam Goldberg as Miller Banks. He'd be known from Dazed and Confused. Me and my husband just did a commentary on that. He also was in A Beautiful Mind. I'm going to butcher this name and I apologize, but it's Milo. Actually, I'm going to look at it so that I don't totally butcher it, but Milo Ventimiglia. I believe the G is silent. and he's Lomas Crawley. A lot of people would mostly know him from Heroes. I think he was also in Gilmore Girls, if I remember correctly. I think he played Jesse. It's been a long time since I've seen that show. And then some of the extras in the supporting cast was Wendell Pierce as Detective Thabado. I hope I pronounced that right. Billy Slaughter as Rex. Nicole Opperman as Sarah. And Rio Hackford as Detective King. And Maria Kalinina as the Countess, or Báthory. So you stumbled on to where we were going to connect for this month's theme, which is talking about the Countess, or the Blood Countess, and that would be Countess Elizabeth Báthory. And I'm really hoping you can't hear that really strange noise that my computer keeps making, because when she overheats, the fan kind of does this turnover thing. And my husband and I can't figure out why she's doing that. It's not an old computer at all, but she just overheats from time to time. So I apologize if you can hear that noise that's going right now. So I have my trusty little story synopsis of the film, which we have: after the death of their friends, Rex, Sarah, and Lomas, an unlikely group comes together to play an underground video game called Stay Alive. In honor of their dead friends, because it was the last thing they had played before they had passed away, they decided to gather together to play this game. Not knowing the danger they are in, Hutch, Abigail, Phineas, October, Swink, and Miller all play the game for hours on end. When Miller and Phineas both mysteriously die the same way that they had died in the game, the surviving friends decide to uncover the truth about Stay Alive's origin. Come to find out, the game is based off the life of Countess Elizabeth Báthory. Can the group of surviving friends find the Countess and stop her first, or will she find them and kill them in the same gruesome way that they were killed in the game? Ooh, mysterious, mysterious. Obviously, my ghost story was loosely based off of Elizabeth Báthory. And if you haven't seen that ghost story, you need to go back and you need to watch that. Except now you're getting a big hint in this one that that's what it's about. But by the fact of saying that this one is loosely based, it is extremely loosely based off of Elizabeth Báthory. But I had pulled up seeing that Stay Alive was on Tubi, so if you have any interest in watching this film after me talking about the review, it is on Tubi for free to watch. Going into depth and thinking about it, I'm like, oh yeah, that movie kind of was supposed to be based around Elizabeth Báthory. So I'm also going to give a huge shout out to my friend Sarah Sin, who has a podcast that she does on Spotify, and she does themed months. And I'm like, it would be really fun to do that idea and just pick a theme for a month and kind of go with it. So this month I decided for the theme of Elizabeth Báthory. By loosely based on Elizabeth Báthory is the fact that when she originally was around, I had stated that she was from 1560 and her birth till her death in 1614, which was 400 centuries ago. In this film, it was based off that she was in America, that she had supposedly moved to America, and that this had only taken place 200 years ago, which isn't possible. Although I guess if they're going by the idea that she was a vampire and that she wasn't really dead and that she moved over to America, I mean, I guess you could continue the whole urban legend of her being a vampire. Yeah, you could probably stem it from that, but I don't think that's what they were doing. So they took their interpretation that Elizabeth Báthory had moved over to New Orleans and had owned a plantation, and that she was, of course, murdering and bathing in the blood of her victims so that she could retain her youth. So similarities to the actual true story of Báthory, but a lot of liberties taken as well. One of the other similarities is that you do see that she is found in the tower, like when they go through the game and when they find that the game is technically in real life too. So the origin of the game was supposed to be that Báthory had found a way to create this game system so that she could find new victims, and that she was still alive in this tower. But instead of the tower being a part of a castle, it was a tower that was stemmed off from a mansion or plantation that was in New Orleans, America. And the fact that the tower was in the middle of a graveyard, so having a little more gruesomeness to it. And another big similarity, her favorite weapon to use, or her weapon of choice for killing her victims, was a favored silver pair of shears. So I did also have that in my story as well. That is a part of the true story. And she did still have the shears in this movie as well. And of course, she's still known as the Blood Countess. That did not change at all. I have other fun facts that I learned about this film. The actor Ben Foster was originally supposed to play the character Hutch, but he thought his brother, John Foster, would be a better fit for the movie. And so Ben Foster, I know him more from 30 Days and Nights. I believe that he played the stranger. So he would have been the human that showed up in the town beforehand, and he was messing things up so that the vampires could come in and terrorize people. Look at me losing my cape again. Anywho, it's cheap material. That's why it's moving. I didn't put my expensive cape on because it's heavy and it's a warm day today. That's what I get for putting on a cheap, loose material that I could breathe in. Shame on me. Anywho, so, where was I? Oh yeah, talking about 30 Days and Nights with Ben Foster and him having his brother John Foster for the role instead. And apparently they've done several films together as well. I think I even put it in here. If I was smart, I put it in here for other facts that Ben Foster has done that before. Well, he'll be like, oh, I think my brother would be better for that role. So this isn't the first time that he's done that. So he was originally offered the part of Eddie O'Hare in The Door in the Floor, but he thought his brother John Foster would be better suited for the job or the role. That's kind of cool. I kept thinking when they were doing the video game part of the film that the mansion looked familiar, but it would have been one of those things from a long, long time ago, so my brain wasn't fully clicking with it. And it was from Sega's 1996 game, The House of the Dead. And I'm like, oh, that's probably why it looked familiar to me. Apparently, this film was only shot in 25 days. I mean, that would make sense of why it would feel like this movie was very fast-paced, because it was filmed in a very short period of time. It was under a month. That's insane to think about, that an entire film, especially a Disney film, was filmed in 25 days. It's almost as if Disney wants to just kind of like brush this one under the rug. But not only that, the fact that this film was supposed to originally be a rated R film, well then Disney wanted them to pull back to have that PG-13 rating. So a lot of the bloodier scenes and intense scenes were pulled back. So there's also a theatrical rating. So you can get the original one if you want to see the R-rated version, obviously, because thanks to technology and everything, we can have director's cut, theatrical's cut. Did I say theatrical? Director's cut. The director's cut, you can see the R version. My brain, obviously, if you want to see the blood and the gore, which of course you do. Who doesn't want to see all that? You want to see the R version, the director's cut. Fun little fact about the game, when it first opens up, it talks about the game production, and it's a fun little spoof on the co-writers named Slam Together. So you have Bell and you have Peterman, and the games are Bellman Games. Oh yeah, and Steve Zahn was originally supposed to be in this film as well. He was originally set to be Miller's character, but it was a last-minute decision to have Adam Goldberg cast in the role instead. And of course, in my feelings, this is a phenomenal cast. Like, I love so many people from this film, and obviously Jimmy is a huge one for me. And I don't think I've ever seen a role that he's done that I haven't liked. Like, he played a major asshole in this movie. You can't dislike him. He's a very blunt guy. He brought the humor for the film. His attire, some of the clothes that he was wearing in this. In fact, when I was watching this with Brian, which, thanks again for watching this film with me, Brian. I know it's a very cheesy, B-rated, ridiculous, old, early 2000s, one of those films that a lot of people don't like. But thank you for watching it with me. And he had mentioned that there was a shirt that Jimmy was wearing in, well, Phineas, his character was wearing, that he wanted to have. So we'll have to see if we can make those shirts someday. So what are my thoughts on this film? Obviously, as I've said before, this is a silly, ridiculous, cheesy, B-rated horror movie. It's not the greatest movie. This is one, I like it. But I like bad horror movies. So yes, it's a bad horror movie. Especially the fact that it's very loosely based off of a well-known, well, to horror people, Báthory's well-known. And this is just kind of a different take on it. If you like films that are ridiculous like me, it's not serious. And yes, the fact that it takes its own interpretation of a true story. But let's face it, Báthory's from 400 years ago. You can take whatever interpretation that you want. I like the fun fact where you could think that Báthory was around from 400 years ago and she was a vampire, and that maybe she wasn't dead, and that 200 years ago she came over to America and then owned a plantation, and then she had new victims, and she was still in that tower, and found a way through technology, creating a video game, that she could still continue to have victims, to continue her reign of terror. But it's just a ridiculous movie. Should it be taken seriously? Hell no. Can you take any horror movie seriously? I mean, really? And so this one's just a fun little horror movie. And you know what? There's some nostalgia to it as well, because like I said, it's one of Disney's only horror / slasher movies. So come on, you gotta give it at least for that. Because I don't know if Disney's ever gonna do another horror film, like an actual serious horror film. And it'd be interesting to see if they would. I recommend this film to anybody who enjoys the shit binges like I do. So shout out to Jackie, who loves his shit binge horror films. So yeah, if you just like the ridiculous films and you're not going to take it seriously, I recommend to watch this just for a fun time. Especially if you want to sit and poke fun at it and just be drinking with a group of friends. Oh my god, you could have a fun time with this film. And also another shout out back to Brian again, and the fact that he was bringing up in the 2000s, there was always the idea that they had to bring in the goth chick. And it wasn't the typical old ways where you would have the really awesome punk goth. And what it got warped into in the 2000s was obligatory, where it just kind of became this idea of this is what goth is. And it's really not. Anybody that was a part of it, we know exactly what it actually was in that time. And it's just weird to see how it warped away from that again. So if you want to see in the early 2000s what they did in horror films, that is to a T exactly how they would do it. And Sophia Bush's character, October, that's kind of what they did. Although I love the character's name, October. That's fantastic. Like, how can you not like the name October? If you love Halloween and you love fall, you're gonna love October too. But don't forget, this story is very loosely based off of The Blood Countess. So I hope you enjoyed my review of Stay Alive's 2006. And another fun fact about it was the fact that in 2006 was the same year that I had graduated from high school. That was the last time that I had seen this film, back when I had graduated. So 2006. 16 years ago? Dear Lord. Anyway, moving on. We will continue my little charade of talking about the Blood Countess. Either next week, I'm not entirely sure if I will be actually doing facts and talking about the Blood Countess and her life and a little bit of the backstory and history that I know about her, or if I'm going to be doing another movie review. Now, I kind of had the shit binge idea, even though I like the film, one that could be considered a bad film. I will have an excellent film for the next horror film that I talk about, and I will be excited to talk about that one with you all. Thank you for joining me here again on another Luxxxy Charms. You can find me, Charsie Luxxx, on my Twitter for Luxxx with 3 X's, so Charsie Luxxx, or on my Instagram, which is Charsie87, or you can find me on my other YouTube channel with my friend DC, Little Channel of Horrors. Yeah, we haven't filmed anything on that for a while, but you can still go through all of our other episodes. I want to say there's at least 20 episodes there where you can hear all of our great takes about very wonderful, popular horror movies. So you'll want to go check them out if you haven't seen them. Thank you for joining me here again. But as always, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, the rest of your evening. I hope you stay safe out there. Make wise choices or don't make wise choices. It doesn't matter what you do as long as you're not hurting anyone out there. But enjoy the rest of your day. Bye. I'm just gonna be like this from now on. I do not understand. Okay. Here we go again.